check them more often than that, because if you're just waiting for that, that's not going to work real good.
I was gonna say, if they're already starting losing weight, isn't that almost a little too late, or getting close to it?
No, it's still not too late. I mean, it depends on the body condition that they've started with. So, if they've got, really high, if they're carrying a fair amount of body fat, or they're really plump, so to speak, you've got time to notice, that they're losing some weight before they get down to a point of no return. And, even then you're going to see, other symptoms. By then you're going to see some worms in the manure or in the dropping or something like that. But
Okay. Our next question is worming necessary with poultry, and should it be done on a scheduled basis? Sometimes worming is necessary, but I wouldn't do it on a regular basis. You run the real risk of having parasites develop resistance to your worm or medication doing that. Not only that, worming is not the most gentle thing on a chicken system, at least I don't think.
it's not. You're right. And actually, there's some pretty good statistical data out there that shows we're killing more earthworms and insects in the soil by worming than we are actual internal parasites, because using the same I can't say the word, but wormer, the fancy word, but it's we're losing effectiveness because of improper use and repeated use when it's actually not necessary. So we're working against ourselves. We're killing more things in nature than we are inside the chicken,
which is not a good thing.
It's not a good thing. You just create an imbalance, and you're building up a tolerance in the internal parasites where it no longer, and a human's response to that is, well, we'll just double up the dose, right? We'll just keep making the dose stronger and stronger and stronger. Or they're going off label, with, another type of wormer that wasn't really made for poultry. And look, I'm not condemning that. I'm just saying, it probably makes more sense. I just wish people would actually send a fecal sample and get, an egg count on it. Get the parasite egg count and see where you're at the same time. Get a cocci egg count or a cocci-oocyst egg count and see where you're at. Right. And most vet clinics.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Huh?
I was
Most
just going
vet
to say,
clinics can do it.
But if they don't, I know some folks have told me my vet is too far away for whatever reason. I just didn't know if there was a lab that could do that they could send a sample to.
There probably is. We just have to research it. I'm sure that there's a lab. You could probably send it to Chewy or something. I mean, where do you send your dog stool sample to check for parasites or any other animal? A long ways back, actually, and she probably still has them. But Carol Wilson at Grimes Cadillac Chickens, she bought a whole bunch of microscopes at a school auction, right? They had basically gone through and sold all of their older microscopes because they were getting new ones. And she has a bunch, reach out to her and learning how to do your own fecal count, egg count is really not that hard.
It's really not.
It's really not. And you can check for coccidiosis. You can check for parasites. You can do your own. You can do any animal you want. You can do your dogs, your children, your husband, your chickens. It doesn't matter, right? You can do whatever you want. The sampling is pretty much the same. If people go this route, though, and that's a whole other conversation we should have. If there's enough interest, maybe we find someone who can come on the show and explain how to do a fecal egg count.
There you go.
And
probably not a bad idea.
We're going to have a lot of show left over, because it's really not that difficult. But again, okay, so here's the thing, right? You learn how to do your own fecal egg count, and people think they're looking for the number 0, right? They think They think they want everything gone, and kind of like rats leaving a sinking ship, they're the first thing to go. Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't have any parasite eggs or you don't have any Coccidia oocyst in the manure, that is worse than having too many, because that animal's gut is not functioning anywhere close to normal. You should be looking at somewhere around 40 to 60 parasite eggs per gram of manure. And same for the coccidiosis, you're looking for like roughly 40 or 50, not above 60 of oocyst, cocciocyst per gram of manure. And that is normal levels. That is a healthy, normal level. Okay. 0 is not the right answer. So,
You were mentioning those microscopes that she has for sale, and I
yeah,
got one from her, and kind of a Mac Daddy of a microscope, really more than I need, but
right.
the price was really, really reasonable.
Depending on which one you got, she was like anywhere from $40 to $60.
Yeah, I
Okay.
got one of the
So,
60s.
yeah. And those things
So,
are way too fancy, right?
yeah.
I'm not even sure how to use it. They didn't have microscopes like that when I went through science class as a kid. So,
Y'all had microscopes in science class?
I only seen one twice before I graduated. They never let me use it though.
Well, what good is that? Gee whiz.
I know, right?
Okay, what about, Jeff, what about holistic preventatives or wormers that have been proven scientifically to be effective? You're more up on that than I am.
Yeah, I mean, there's data out there on the use of condensed tannins, which is, it's in a lot of the nut tree in their exterior coating, like red oaks, for instance, have a high level of tannin on the outer shell. Black walnuts are really high in tannins. Chicory, so tannins are a natural defense for, for keeping parasites under normal conditions. Of course, my mixture, I think we've shared it before, but it's equal parts of cayenne pepper, garlic, and diatomaceous earth. You mix that together. If you're using fresh cayenne, fresh garlic, and there's enough juice or liquid there, you may add a little bit to it, and you can dollop that on top of the feed, and you feed that for about a week just to get things back to normal levels. And that was actually studied on dairy animals at Clemson University, right? So that's published in the Dairy Science Journal or something like that. But these things have been used for a long time. Some people like to use wormwood, with tannins. There's a bunch of different natural treatments out there, and so it is possible. It's using them at the right time. See, and when you're doing something holistic or natural or herbal or whatever label you want to put on it, you can do that with with more frequently, and we're not killing other insects or parasites, or we're not killing earthworms, we're not killing beneficials, right, as after it passes through the chicken. So just it's an option. So,
Very good. Let's see our next. Pull up that next slide here. What kind of wormers are available for poultry, and how do you find them? I'm going to be honest, and I don't go into a feed store very regularly, but it's getting harder. I haven't seen wormers with the frequency that I have in the past. I
I
don't
have
know
no
why that
idea.
is.
Yeah. This is definitely not my question. I don't have the first clue what the names of them are and what to use. So,
I know Safeguard was one I used to see a good bit, which I think is actually for goats and whatnot. But they also have directions for poultry. But I haven't seen it a lot lately. But with that said, I'm sure you can find it online.
Yeah, I mean, Safeguard and Ivomec are the top two names, out there.
Mm-hmm.
So Carol said she still had some. Carol still has some microscopes left.
Oh, cool.
They're all good.
Esther says, I've heard there's a coccidiosis vaccine. Is that a good thing? I've not had any experience with it, so
Okay, so for poor managers and poor housekeepers,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it is an advantage. For people who can keep their coops and their runs and keep their birds in a decent, clean living environment, not necessary. It's personal preference, in my opinion. Okay.
I think the big push for doing that was from the commercial industry when that first came
Yep.
out. I know I
Yep.
was seeing it in some of the newsletters that I get, and they were all hepped up on that coccidiosis vaccine.
Yep. They're still giving it. Most of the flocks
Mm-hmm.
out there are getting it, so it's still in common use. How much it really helps, I don't know, because it is a live virus. Basically, you're inoculating the bird with coccidiosis at an
Yeah.
early age, so it can build up its own immunity to it.
You could always give them some milk.
Works for me.
Live viruses, I'm sorry, it just kind of seems counterproductive to me in a way, but that's just me.
Well, okay, so they're going to be shedding off. So if you're going to give that vaccine at the hatchery before you receive your birds, or however you're going to do it, then you need to keep them away from your other population, because there's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
high shed off in that manure and in that bedding.
Yep.
So you don't want to cross contaminate. And that's with any live virus. I think the key point that I'd want to bring up is whatever vaccination program your existing birds have is what you want to stay with. If you start mixing and matching new vaccines, and especially if they're live virus and you bring them into your yard, then you're asking for problems, right? So if they're not all Merrick's vac, and
Don't
you
do
don't
it.
want to start bringing in birds that are Merrick vac, right?
No.
Because you're asking for problems. Your vaccination program needs to be consistent and universal. Okay, so whatever the old ones got, that's what everybody else is supposed to get, and you just keep it that way.
I mean, I really think that if not only your vaccination program, but your housekeeping, your feeding, you you know, in my opinion, you should do all that consistently.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Next
that's
question.
100%. So
Next question is it safe to use wormers designated for other livestock and just lower the dose according by weight?
I don't know. I mean, they're doing it. I
Yeah.
don't know. I haven't heard of any severe, adverse effects from doing it. Like I said, there's a bunch of people using Ivomec um, in different forms, all the different forms, whether they're using the pour on or whatever. But
I
they're
think that
doing it. Is it a
yeah,
good idea? I don't know.
I think
You
that
have to
depends
be,
on how much you trust your math.
well, not only that, but you have to be careful with that stuff because a lot of a lot of the wormers for other livestock is not approved for live wormers on poultry.
Yep. And there's a reason for it too.
Yes.
Well, okay, particularly if they're egg or meat. Okay, the industry assumes that they're either egg or meat birds. Okay, they don't. The show industry, or um, birds like most of our folks are keeping, are such a small percentage of the total birds in existence out there. Okay, they don't. The drug industry is not going to give them consideration on a label. All right, so now considering modern broilers, modern turkeys, and commercial egg laying houses, most of those other wormers have significant withholding periods,
Mm-hmm.
right, that do not make them effective for commercial poultry. Okay, and I don't know that folks really pay attention to those withholding warnings, even at home. Some do. Some do. I see the comments out there. Oh, what's the withholding if I give them Ivomec? Well, there's some data out there that says, once you give a bird Ivomec, you're not supposed to ever eat those eggs again. Okay.
Right.
Now, right, wrong. I'm not taking a side here, so don't shoot me. Just saying this is some pretty recent information that's been out there that once you give them Ivomec, you're not supposed to ever eat the eggs. Well, okay, if you can't do that, then what happens to hatching eggs? Okay, what effect does that have on your chicks? I don't know. I'm asking that question. I'm seriously curious about it. So
I don't ever recall seeing anything that talked about that, any studies or anything. There
I
may
haven't
be some
either.
out there. I just haven't seen
Yeah.
them. Do different types of worms require different wormers, or is it one size fits all? Not so much one size fits all. I remember a very common wormer that everybody, oh, my birds got worms, and they went out and got some wazine. And that definitely
Is
was not
Wazzy?
good on things like tapeworms. It wouldn't work on them at all. But wazine is mostly for just roundworms. So you just have to read the label description and go by what they tell you there. But no, it's not one for all worms. Doesn't work that way. At least the over-the-counter wormers that I'm aware of.
I mean, I thought Safeguard pretty much got them all. And
I think so, yeah.
I thought Ivomec got them all, or supposed to, according to the label. I thought those were probably your two best broad spectrum, but I honestly don't know. Again, I'm not up on commercial medications and wormers, so you could do like the old timers did, like your grandparents did, Rip. You just give them some kerosene.
There you go.
Yeah,
That'll work.
A few drops of kerosene usually takes care of it, right? I can't believe there's people still doing that, right? So
But they do. Like, I see people talking about it all the time. People
all the time
post pictures of their birds and tell us what's going on with it. And there's somebody that's going to say, give them some kerosene. Like,
yeah.
What is that? Give it some kerosene. If it lives, it won't have any worms. If it doesn't, what's the withholding product on a petroleum product?
Oh gosh.
I have no idea.
How long do you withhold on that one?
I see that give them kerosene way too often.
Yeah. You would think that would kind of die out as long as it's been going on, but it sure hadn't. They keep.
No, it sure hadn't. That's got to be 100 years old, and it's still going.
Easy.
Yeah.
I know my grandparents were doing it. So.
Well, they didn't have choices back in your grandparents' day, right? We didn't have all these modern wormers, so probably kerosene cured just about everything.
Ground up eggshells. Feed them ground up eggshells.
Yeah. And I heard that as well, but
cuts the worms, but I don't think so.
Well, diatomaceous earth supposedly does the same thing, right? So when you look at it under a microscope, right, it has a lot of coarse, sharp edges, and it gets in the segment of the worm, right, and just erodes. It acts like sandpaper in the segment of the worm, right, in the segmented bodies, and just lacerates them and cuts them apart. But and there's so many people that are anti-diatomaceous earth as well, so I just hesitate to talk about it, but it's...
You'll get some emails.
That's fine.
Jerry, we got any questions? I've had my screen set to full screen so I could actually read that PowerPoint, but if we had any questions come in we need to address?
So there's a couple people that are wanting to get in touch with Carol. So if she would post her information on there, that way she could probably move some more of them microscopes. The only other thing is, some people have made some comments about coccidiosis. Like this one right here, very few problems with it unless they get really wet weather. And yeah, I mean, I have one of the sections of my chicken yard. It's down at a bottom, and when it rains a lot and it all goes down there, the muckety muck gets pretty bad. And so I tend to go put some stall pellets and stick some more peat moss down there to where it's built up pretty thick now to kind of try to avoid that. But when you have a bedding or your chicken pens, if it gets wet and gets irritated, it will definitely get it worse.
Well, it's like most other things with bedding. When it gets wet, it's working against you, not for you.
Let's see.
And as far as getting a hold of Carol, I mean, you can find her on Facebook as Grimes Cadillac Chickens.
Yeah.
When Jeff told me about it, that's how I reached out to her, and she's really good and prompt about getting back to you.
She is.
Now, this person right here says, wouldn't you agree that these birds require a certain amount of worms in their system? And yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff talked about that a little earlier.
No doubt.
I covered that, I think, before he jumped in, is like, fecal egg counts. Fecal egg counts somewhere between 40 and 60 is a normal, healthy digestive tract. If you're getting much over 100, you want to start doing something, right? And I forgot to mention, so if you're going to do something to manage your parasites, like you want to do something to purge, eggs and parasites out, as soon as you're done, you need to change the bedding. Okay. You need to clean that environment to get all those eggs and all those parasites away from your chickens, or you're just going to reinfect them. So.
Now, here's another one right here. It says, wouldn't an infested bird with worms, wouldn't it be best to cull it because their ability to become resilient isn't obtainable because they show a weakness?
That's what I would do.
Yes.
And if we don't screw up their immune system when they're young, and we develop it properly in that first 3 to 4 weeks, they're not going to have an overdose. I mean, if we have a proper environment, right, we're doing our job as keepers, it really should never be a problem. Like Laura said, she hardly ever sees any coccidiosis. So
this would be something that would relate to not overpopulating your coops and runs, maintaining nutrition and keeping your birds healthy and things like that. And like we said earlier, giving them the buttermilk during the first few weeks from hatch to help build up the gut health.
You really like your buttermilk. It can be any kind of milk. That's fine. Doesn't have to be butter.
I mean, he's a Southern boy. I mean,
for me, buttermilk's easily obtainable. And I'll admit, I cheat. I have a source where I can get raw buttermilk and I can freeze dry it so it's in powder form. And I can mix it in their feed and it works.
I've even seen buttermilk powder, and I hadn't thought about this, but I've seen buttermilk powder for sale in the grocery store.
Esther says, I read Safeguard Fenbendazole should not be given during molt. It will negatively affect feather growth or quality.
I can see the connection. I hadn't heard that before. Esther brought it up. But when you totally disrupt the digestive tract by giving wormers, you're also going to negatively affect nutrient absorption, and that's going to go to every part of that chicken's body. So I can see that being true. I mean, when you give a wormer, it's stripping everything out of there. Well, I mean, it's trying to strip everything out of there.
Yeah.
People are going way off label at 2 and 3 times the recommended doses. So, the inside of that chicken going to feel like crap.
I would think it essentially beats them up pretty bad.
I would think so, yeah. Okay, it's what we got here next. If you suspect your flock has worms, how can you be sure if you can't physically see them in the droppings? And what if there is no local vet that can do a float test? And we kind of touched on that earlier, but
Yeah, the float test, like I said, it's not rocket science. And, most of the time when you send in a fecal drop in, whenever you send in a fecal sample anyway, they've either got students or grad students or, vet techs or somebody like that are doing it. It's not actually the veterinarian doing it. So it's not hard to figure that out.
no, it's really pretty easy. I know when I started out, I was a little unsure of myself, but then after I did it 2 or 3 times, I thought, okay, this is pretty easy. Let's see. Next question. Can you overworm a flock? Is there an egg or meat withdrawal period for worming? Yes, I believe you can overworm your flock. And we
Yeah.
talked about that. One of the first things we talked about is when folks start worming their birds on a regular basis and the problems that can cause. As far as egg or meat withdrawal period for worming, it should be on your wormer. It should state that if it's indicated for using on poultry, it will have if there is a withdrawal period for eggs or for meat.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Here we go, Rip. Here's one that popped up on the side that says, "What about giving them yogurt at an early age?"
Yeah, I've done that.
And that's one thing that you and Jeff both do when they hatch out.
Yeah, I started about day 3.
Instead of milk, yogurt does the same thing.
Yeah, you just want to make sure it has a live culture. So somebody pointed out to me that a lot of yogurt is pasteurized after they're done doing the culturing. So you need to read the label and make sure you have one with live probiotics. It'll be better. I mean, regular pasteurized yogurt will be fine. It'll still have some benefit, but you want something still with a live culture in it.
The last time I was looking for yogurt for my birds, I had a heck of a time finding anything live cultured in the grocery store, and went to the health food store. They had racks of it there, so that's a good source if you've got a health or natural food store in your shopping area. Check them out for that yogurt. Let's see. Do free range birds need to be wormed more often than penned birds? Jeff, you work with free range birds a whole lot more than I do.
Now, look, I mean, if feeders and waters and their living environment is managed correctly, and Gary touched on it when his one part of his yard gets all mucky and too wet, those parasites love a moist environment and their activity level is quite a bit higher. But the birds have to be eating something off of the ground to get the larva, to pick up the larva or the parasite. So it's not going to happen by accident. And I mean, spilling feed on the ground is not a good thing. Pretty much with all animals universally, what we think we know on the science side is a parasite larvae can migrate up a blade of grass somewhere between 3 to 5 inches. Okay. So when we are overgrazing grass, and eating it down to the ground, we are increasing the probability or possibility of getting parasite larvae. Right.
Yeah.
So if we can keep our forages, 6 inches or taller, we should be able to minimize that a lot. Now, the distance that larvae travels is largely dependent on both temperature. It's like time of year and temperature, but also, moisture in that environment. So when it's wetter, like larvae tend to be much more active in that 60 to 70 degree range. And when the ground moisture, spring and fall, when we have better ground moisture in most of the US, so that's when the larvae will travel up further. Plus, the sun isn't nearly as direct. So, timing is everything, length of your forage is everything, right? Try not to spill your spill your grains on the ground. So it can be managed really well with good management techniques and practices.
Here's a comment from Lloyd Wang. He says, I never worm my free range birds. Well, Lloyd, knowing you, I know you keep things as clean as possible and you manage all that kind of stuff. So that's probably a pretty good setup you got going there.
I want to know where Lloyd's been for the last year. He's been
He's been hiding out
MIA.
somewhere.
Yeah, he's been gone. He used to be a regular, and then I thought he left us. I don't know. Didn't know if he died or whatever, but glad to see him back. But
Yeah,
I don't
thanks
know
for
where he
checking in,
went.
Lloyd.
Yeah.
Carol Wilson, Jeff, wants you to tell him how to make your own yogurt. It's very easy.
Yeah, it is very easy. And the easiest way is once you get the culture through a live, actually, when you get a yogurt at the store of your preference, it's easy to start with just a plain yogurt, make sure it has the live cultures. But you can take a small amount, a couple tablespoons of that existing yogurt and add it to milk, and you keep it at I'm gonna screw up the temperature, but you're basically keeping it warm. You're keeping it like right around that 100-degree mark, because the bacteria that make yogurt tend to die off at about 125. So your lactobacillus acidophilus, for instance, which is one of the keys for making a really good yogurt, it has a heat tolerance up to 125. So you want to be in that 100, 110 range. So they're very active and they're multiplying. But you can take existing yogurt and add it to, better to add it to raw milk, but you can use pasteurized and give it some time. And give it a few days in a nice warm environment.
Doesn't take
Keep
long
it
at all.
sealed. No, it doesn't take long at all. Keep it sealed. You don't want to keep it airtight sealed, but you want to keep it protected from any bacteria that may be floating in the environment. And I know that somebody just cringed thinking bacteria floating in the environment, but yeah, they are among us. They're kind
They
of like
are.
UFOs, right?
They're
They are
Yeah,
everywhere.
here.
it's everywhere.
They are.
Let's see. Here's one. I've also heard that oregano oil could disrupt internal parasites.
Works better on coccidiosis and works really good on what we refer to as the gram-positive type bacteria, the pathogenic bacteria. It works good on your E. coli, your salmonellas. It'll help keep those under control. And it tends not to hurt the beneficial bacteria. So what we're finding is that small amounts of oregano oil, either added to the feed or on an ongoing basis, can be quite beneficial, to the immune system, to the diet. Well, really, once you clean up the digestive tract and it's working and functioning as it's supposed to, pretty much the overall health of your bird is going to come from the health of any animal is directly tied to the health of the gut. So when the gut is healthy, the living creature is going to be healthy. So anyway, all that to say, oregano oil can be a very effective tool when used correctly. Don't go out and buy oregano oil and start dumping it down your chick's beak, and because a bunch of them will be dead tomorrow. The amount of oregano oil, you have to look at the strength. What's the strength of the oil? But it's such a small amount. Like we're adding 1 to 2 pounds of oregano oil in an entire 2,000 pounds of feed. Okay. Very, very small amounts. Okay. So we need to find a way to dilute it, make sure everybody's getting it. I like to have it put it through the watering system. I find it to be a lot more effective, and all the birds tend to get it because I can get it to distribute more evenly in their drinking water. But it can be put in the feed, it can be put in the water. Never give it straight to the chicken, it's going to die. Okay. Oregano oil is really strong, and you can have some pretty toxic reactions. So,
Jeff, I've got a question on the oregano oil in the water. Do y'all use an emulsifier in that to keep it in suspension, or?
yeah, the really good companies out there, and if people are now scratching their head and they're interested, the Ralco company out of Marshall, Minnesota, they've now have a homeowner line, and it's called Strong Animals. And they've gone a step further than just oregano oil. So they're blending oregano, cinnamon oil, and they have a small amount of tea tree oil already blended together. But they've got this fancy machine, for micro infusing.
Mhm.
So when they run it through there, they actually separate those oil molecules to such a degree, and they do something to them in that process that they don't form back together. You know how eventually oil will want to cling back together,
Yeah.
but these actually stay in suspension very nicely. So they've got some sort of patented process to get those oils to break apart and stay apart. So
That sounds a little bit too expensive for my handful of birds.
well, they make it in such a diluted form. They're making it for the backyard flocks, right?
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, it's actually, yeah. That's why I said the strong animal side. So I've worked with them for years as the Ralco side, and where we're putting in pounds per ton kind of thing. And they've come out with a homeowner line, makes it a whole lot more manageable. And I've always found them to be really good, credible people. And they'll help you out if you got questions.
Very good. That's good to know
Okay.
information. Let's see, Lloyd. So it says go-to chicken medicine is high-proof alcohol with garlic.
Yeah, he's made the garlic tincture that we've talked about for a
Yep,
couple years now.
that's good
And
stuff.
if you use it correctly, and you use it, you know, as long as you use it correctly, it's like any other medication, and you catch it early enough, it works really, really good.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see, we've got a new slide coming up here. Do you always worm the entire flock, or are there times when it's appropriate to worm only a single bird? I've When I have wormed, I would worm the whole flock.
It makes more sense because the chances of only one bird having parasites is slim. The rest probably have lower levels, right? But the environment at that point is contaminated. So, again, you're right, Rip. You don't do just one bird, but you got to be prepared to do a clean out as well.
True, really true. Okay. The horse wormer with active ingredient benzaldehyde is often recommended to be given as a pea-sized dose to chickens. Given this, could it be different from person to person? Are there dangers of overdosing a bird?
I
I
don't know.
would think that there would be dangers of overdosing. It's just like any other medication.
Yeah.
Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And it says here
I
if it
don't
is
know.
if this is safe, how many times would this need to be used before effectively killing the parasite or eggs? Most of the wormers that I used to use didn't require retreatment. So that may have
Yeah,
changed, but
I was
they
going to
used to hit
say,
them hard enough with one dose. So
yeah.
I've seen some that mix with water that say go for 5 days, but to me, anytime you're using a worm or a medication, you should do the thing that guys aren't known for doing and actually read the label and follow the instruction, because I feel
why
like
would you do that?
a lot of research went into those instructions, a lot more than what I care to do. And I would lean on the side of caution and just follow the instructions and try it out, because, that they came up with them. And I personally care about most all of my birds, some more than some others. That's why I say most. But I wouldn't want to lose any of them from mistreatment. And if I caused one of my birds, if I essentially overdosed one of my birds on wormer or anything else, I would feel bad.
I agree. I think that winds up our parasite questions, but I had someone wanting me to explain the difference, or really explain what a duckwing was. Duckwing used in the name of a variety of birds like silver duckwing, Old English, or golden duckwing, Old English. And I've got some pictures here that really illustrate it pretty well. The bird on the left here is a black-breasted red Old English game, and he is a duckwing. You see down at the bottom that little red patch there on on his wing indicates that's a duckwing, and duckwing chicks will also be. So those are the ones that give you the sort of chipmunk stripe chicks. Now, if the bird has a solid wing color, like the bird on the right, that one is called a crowwing, 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 because it's all one color. And these are birds' color patterns that are based on birchen, like silver birchens or blue silver birchens, or this case, it's brown red Old English. I'm never sure where the brown term came from, but that's what it is. So, duckwing is just a term describing the color of the wing. That's all it boils down to.
So, like, if they have that additional band out towards the tip, like where you have the arrow, that makes it a duck wing.
Yes, that's called the wing bay.
Okay, the wing bay. And if it's solid, it's a crow wing.
Correct.
Got it.
And I know until you've had it explained that it sounds terribly confusing, but it's really not. Once you see it, it's pretty easy to spot. Kerry, we got any more questions here?
I do not see any more. Aside from like the comment we already talked about that Lloyd had put in there. I do not see any more questions in the comment section.
Got you. One thing we probably should talk about, guys, is coming up next week. Guess where we're going to be, folks? We're going to be in Columbus, Ohio, for the Columbus National Poultry Show. I was talking with Claire Lagler about the show just, yesterday, as a matter of fact, and they have a little over 7,000 birds entered so far. He said that was a record. They normally don't have that many for a regular show. The only time they go higher than that is when they have like an APA national or an ABA national meet, or some big meet going on there. So he was actually calling me wanting to know if I judged the show, but I'm not able to do that because he's having a hard time getting enough judges. He said As of yesterday, he had 14 judges hired, and they needed more than that. And with 7,000 birds, I can understand that.
I mean, they're going to spend all day Saturday judging birds with only 14 judges.
Yeah,
Those guys are going to be tired.
you can figure judging at a good pace. About 400 birds a day is all a judge can handle and maintain his sanity and health. Um, it's a pretty good thing. Um, but if you're in that neck of the woods or you're at the show, please stop by. Kerry, you're going to have a booth there. How can they identify the booth?
They will be able to see a big sign that says Show Pro, and they will see the world-renowned poultry professional Rip Stalvey
Would you
and
give it a rest?
Jeff Maddox, the infamous poultry nutritionist, sitting in a nice, comfortable chair. That'd be the easiest way to identify it.
Well, if you're there, folks, we really would love to have you stop by and say hi and chat with us a while. I always enjoy talking chickens, that I know Jeff does and Kerry does as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a question we can help you with there at the show, we'd be glad to do that.
Last year we didn't get enough selfies with the PK 360 crowd that, come and watch the show or whatever. So, and look, I suck at selfies, but if whoever's walking down that hall, I'll happily stand there and let somebody else take it, but I'm not that. But Esther did pop in a question before we take off. So one of her girls laid an egg with a thick albumin. When she cracks the egg, the yolk comes out, but the white sticks to the inside of the shell. Will the eggs like this develop and hatch? Or are they just good for making meringue? And I don't have an answer for her. I don't know.
I don't either. I've never encountered that or never read anything about it.
I haven't either.
But look,
this is a new one.
I'm going to be honest, guys. In the realm of science, I will volunteer incubator time. If she wants to send those to me, I'll be glad to hatch them out and see. Some of my students at school have found out that I tend chickens a little bit. And one of the things that the FFA does in a lot of states, but especially in Alabama, is they promote hatching eggs in the classroom. So, I mean, I could put some in the incubator on the desk and kind of get them to hatch out on a Wednesday, hopefully. And we could answer her question for her if she'd like.
There you go.
I thought you were just trying to get some free Chanticleers, some free.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't going to say anything.
I thought he was horning in on John Gunderman's genetics, but
see, the downside is if I have Chanticleers in Alabama, and I've already thought about this, I'm going to have to essentially get like one of those portico fans that has the mister in it to put at the pen where I keep them in, or something, because they're not designed for Alabama. They're designed for Vermont.
Yeah.
Hardly any comb and no wattles. Yes, sir, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be like me or Rip being out on the back porch in August.
But they're good looking birds. They're really good looking birds.
They are. And come to think of it, since she got her birds from John may have encountered the thick albumin situation. I'm going to be recording a podcast with him tomorrow morning, so I'll ask him.
Yeah, that would be good. And he hatches out a lot, so.
And it's only, so I don't think it's anything nutritional, and Esther's making her own feed. So I have no idea. I'm thinking it's something to do with dehydration, would make. A lot of times when I see the whites either runnier or less runny, it goes directly to how much moisture, how much water the bird's drinking. So, I wonder, did the bird just not drink enough, on that given day? I don't know. I'm curious now, but she's got me puzzled. I don't know the answer to that question.
I'm just sitting here thinking, I know I'm going to have to spend some time tomorrow researching that now that she
Yeah.
brought it up.
Yeah.
All
Laura, you're
right.
not coming? Carol, you need to come to the Ohio show at least
Yes, she
once.
does.
And I don't know if I'm going to go again after this year. So this would be the best year for you to come.
So, Carol, now what's your excuse? Just show up. We'll be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even buy you a Coke. Can't beat that.
Hey,
Maybe
if
she
she
needs
does
maybe she
come,
needs a ride from the airport there.
if she does come, maybe she could put one of those microscopes, bring it with her, and I'd take it off her hands.
Maybe she could bring a half a dozen of them and move them at the show.
Oh, we could sell the heck out of those things at that show.
I'll bet.
Not a problem.
Especially if we could teach people how to do a fecal float. So
Well, if Carol's there,
you've done it, Rip. So you
yeah.
know how to do it. Is it?
I'm not the most proficient and the tidiest person when it comes to doing fecal float tests, but yeah, I've done it.
No. Actually, I wonder if we could get a short video on it to use on the show, some upcoming, and maybe
it may
you can
already be
narrate the
something.
way through. Huh?
There may already be a video of that out there. I'll make a note to check on that.
A short video, right? We don't want to use the whole show up, but if we can do snippets or something, you can narrate the way through it, and you can show people how to do it.
Yep, we can do that.
Hey, we did tempt her, so she is tempted now.
Come on, Carol. Come on. Do it. Where all three of us are going to be there.
That's right. Be there or be square.
You can see all three of us at one time. I mean, it's not.
I may
much
never
to be
have
around,
that opportunity again.
That's at least not for a while. So.
All righty. Gary, you have anything else this evening?
I do not, sir.
Jeff, what about you?
No, sir. I'm good. I've done enough talking.
I think Trick or Treat kind of got into our crowd tonight. Apologize because we're winding up a little bit earlier than we normally do, but we will be back in 2 weeks. And until then, we hope you all enjoy yourselves, have a good time, and most of all, enjoy your birds. So until then, we will see you later, folks. Bye-bye.